people ask what the Vithani Weave wanted from us, I tell them it wasn't want, it was habit. The Weave catalogues. It has catalogued everything it has ever encountered in the 6,000 years it has been expanding through its arm of the galaxy. We were simply the next entry, until we weren't. I was Signals Specialist Marin Edu, assigned to the UES Archivist on a long-range documentation survey of the Haven Drift, Survey Corridor 7. The Archivist was not a warship. She carried no main battery, no point defense rail clusters, nothing designed to kill at range. She was a hull built for listening, asymmetric cylindrical frame, bristled along her dorsal spine with passive sensor arrays and long baseline antennae, her interior given over almost entirely to data processing cores and the cold vaults that held everything we'd recorded. A quiet ship, a careful ship. We had been in the drift for 31 days when I found the thread. I almost missed it. Our standard survey protocol logged all incoming signal density variations against a baseline we'd established in the first 72 hours on station. The drift was electromagnetically noisy, a sparse debris field from a stellar collision 400,000 years prior, still shedding residual radiation in long, slow pulses. I was sorting through a backlog of flagged anomalies on a Tuesday morning, ship time, working through my second coffee, when I noticed that a particular band of low-frequency interference had a periodicity that was too regular. Not regular in the way physical phenomena are regular, not the blunt rhythm of a pulsar or the mechanical predictability of orbital mechanics. Regular in the way a mind is regular, structured, deliberate, recursive. I ran it through the pattern isolation suite twice before I called Lieutenant Commander Sun Abiara to my station. He leaned over my shoulder and studied the returns for a long time without speaking. He had 20 years in signals work before the Archivist, and I had learned that when Abiara went quiet, it meant he was taking something seriously. How long has that periodicity been present? He asked. I went back through our full survey log. Day 1, I said. It was there when we arrived. He straightened. Then they were here before we were. We spent the next 14 hours reconstructing the signal layer in full. Abiara pulled 2 of the Night Watch sensor techs in to assist, and we worked in near silence, the signals bay lit only by the blue-white glow of active displays. The Archivist's processing cores ran hot enough by hour 8 that I could feel the warmth through the console housing. What emerged from that reconstruction was not what either of us expected. The low-frequency band was not a broadcast. It was not a targeting emission or a navigational pulse. It was a record, a living one. The Vithani Weave, we did not have a name for them yet, but the structure of the signal would later give xenolinguistics enough to build one. Encoded information in organic tissue matrices transmitted as dense signal packets, each one self-correcting, each one carrying a redundant index that allowed any fragment to reconstruct the whole. What we were receiving was a running biological archive, and the subject of that archive we came to understand as the hours of reconstruction accumulated on my display was us. They had been cataloging the Archivist for 31 days. Every hull geometry scan we'd read as background scatter was theirs. Every low-level electromagnetic measurement we'd attributed to the drift's ambient noise was a precise notation in a living record. They had logged our power consumption curves, our internal drive harmonics, our antenna rotation intervals, the thermal output of our processing cores. They had, in the dense recursive packets of the deepest signal layer, begun building a structural model of the ship itself, not a weapons profile, not a tactical assessment, a specimen entry, the kind of entry a naturalist makes when they find something new and want to understand it completely before they decide what it is. They thought we didn't know. I sat back in my chair and looked at Abiara. He looked at me. Neither of us spoke for a moment. They're archivists, I said. Yes, he said. So are we. He nodded slowly. Yes, I thought about that for a while. We had come to the Haven Drift to document. Our ship's entire purpose, her entire hull configuration and mission profile, was the careful and thorough recording of everything she encountered. We had 31 days of meticulous signals data, spectral surveys, electromagnetic profiles of the drift's debris field, and now, without intending to, 31 days of detailed returns from a biological intelligence that had been doing exactly the same thing to us. The question was what to do with that. Abiara contacted Captain Reyes. Reyes came to the signals bay, reviewed the reconstruction, and stood for a long time with her hands clasped behind her back. She was a compact woman who had spent most of her career on documentation hulls and survey vessels, and she had a way of assessing a situation that reminded me of the way the Weave had been assessing us, methodical, unhurried, thorough. They haven't attempted contact, she said. No, ma'am. The signal layer is entirely passive from their side, observational only. Then they're watching to see what we do. She was right. We'd been reading the drift's background noise as noise. The moment we demonstrated we'd decoded it, the moment we proved we'd been listening back, the nature of the encounter would change. We had a choice. We could maintain the survey posture, pretend we hadn't noticed, and let them continue their archive in the belief that we were unaware. Or we could answer. The Archivist had not come to the Haven Drift to hide. "Power the drive cores to full active," Captain Reyes said. "All arrays live. Maintain survey posture. No weapons, no targeting emissions. But let them see every system we have, running at full resolution." It took 11 minutes for the drive cores to spool up from survey idle to full active. During those 11 minutes I watched the signal layer in real time. The Weave's archival packets continued their steady rhythm, unchanged. They were thorough. They kept recording even as our power output climbed, as our thermal signature expanded, as the electromagnetic footprint of the Archivist grew from the quiet murmur of a listening ship to the full-throated presence of a vessel running everything she had at once. We were not launching weapons. We were not broadcasting a warning. We were simply turning to face them, completely, deliberately, with every instrument the ship possessed, and looking back. The archival packets stopped at the 11-minute mark, 3 seconds after our drive cores reached full output. The silence in the signal layer lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds, I counted. Then the Weave transmitted. It was a single packet, different in structure from everything we'd received before. Not an observation, not a specimen entry, a copy. They sent us a copy of their own archive matrix, the structural format of the living record itself, not a specific entry but the architecture, the way the record was built, the biological encoding schema, the recursive indexing logic, the system by which the Weave organized everything it had ever catalogued. They were showing us how they worked. Abiara exhaled slowly beside me. "They recognized us," he said. "Yes, not as a threat, not as prey, as something they had not encountered before in 6,000 years of cataloging, something that catalogued back." 40 minutes after the transmission, our long-range passives registered the Weave's primary signal cluster withdrawing to a distance of approximately 300,000 kilometers, not fleeing, repositioning, giving us room. The archive of the Archivist, we confirmed this later, remained intact in their record. They had not closed the entry, they had simply left a margin in it, space for what came next. We spent the remaining 9 days of our survey window recording everything we could about the Weave's signal architecture from the copy they'd sent. Our data vaults held, by the time we broke station and began the long transit home, more information about Vithani Weave communication structure than any other vessel in the fleet, because no other vessel had been handed the key by the Weave itself. Captain Reyes filed the first contact report from Survey Corridor 7, Haven Drift, dated day 40 of the mission. I wrote the signals annex. It ran to 214 pages. I still think about those 4 minutes and 17 seconds of silence, the moment between their archive going quiet and their transmission beginning. What a distributed biological intelligence does in 4 minutes when it encounters, for the first time in its long history, something that noticed it noticing. I have tried to imagine it from their side. The record suddenly aware that its subject is aware, the cataloger confronted with a cataloger. 6,000 years of one-directional observation arriving at a moment that has no entry in the existing archive, no category, no precedent. They had looked at 10,000 species and none of them had looked back. Not like this, not with the quiet, complete, professional attention of a ship whose entire design was built around exactly that act. The Weave had catalogued 10,000 species by the time we met them. They had never sent anyone a copy of the archive matrix, not once, in 6,000 years. We were the first entry that looked up.